Several years ago, I made a series of videos talking about various ThinkPads, laptops that I consider to be good machines for someone on a budget. I also made a video using a ThinkPad T60 from 2006 for everyday use, and more recently built myself a FrankenPad utilizing a T61 motherboard and some upgraded components. However, it's been a long time since I made those videos, and computers like the T61 have now passed the 15-year mark. In the computing world, that can easily be considered a lifetime. So I have to wonder, can a 15-year-old laptop like my T61 still be useful for everyday use? Everyone is going to have a different use case for their computers, and what works for me may not work for someone else. But I'm going to test some of the things that I think most people use computers for. My tests will include browsing the internet, navigating social media, streaming videos, basic productivity, video editing, and gaming. One thing to consider is that I have made a lot of upgrades to this laptop, including maxing out the RAM at 8GB, a custom BIOS that removes certain hardware restrictions, and a faster processor than this machine would have shipped with. But I don't think it'll make enough of a difference to change the outcome when it comes to how usable it is. Without any further ado, let's take a look at this old ThinkPad and see what it can do. Looking around the machine, there are a good selection of ports that still aren't too out of place on modern laptops, such as 3 USB 2.0 ports, headphone and microphone jacks, an Ethernet jack and 56K modem, VGA output, an expansion slot for card bus and express card upgrades, a wireless switch and IR receiver, and an optical drive which can be swapped out for a second hard drive or an extra battery. Opening up the laptop, there's a small but usable touchpad, dedicated touchpad and track point buttons, and the famous keyboard with a little red dot in the middle that ThinkPads are known for. There's a fingerprint reader for added security and several indicator lights for things like power status, wireless and drive activity, and locked keys. The T60s came in 14 and 15-inch sizes with a handful of resolutions available, and a 15-inch widescreen version was offered as well. The younger T61 was available primarily in widescreen for both the 14 and 15-inch options, but a 4x3 14-inch version was also offered, and this is the version that I have transplanted into this 15-inch T60 chassis. If you want to learn more about this process and why I made myself a so-called FrankenPad, I made a series of videos about it a few years ago. The T60 uses first-generation Core Duo and Core 2 Duo processors. Up to 4GB of DDR2 RAM can be installed. However, due to hardware limitations, only 3GB can actually be utilized. The T61 allows for up to 8GB of RAM and uses later Core 2 Duo processors. And with the Middleton's BIOS can support faster processors, such as the Core 2 Extreme that I installed. Hard drives were standard when these machines were new, but anybody using an older laptop for everyday use should install a solid-state drive for faster load times. On the graphics side, some models came with just Intel's onboard graphics, but dedicated graphics options were available, provided by ATI on the T60 and NVIDIA on the T61. It's also possible to use an external graphics card through the express card slot or with the ThinkPad Advanced docking station, but that's a can of worms for another day. When these laptops were new, Windows XP was standard. However, Windows Vista eventually was adopted, and most machines from this era would have shipped with it. Windows 10 runs perfectly fine, and all of the hardware works as it should. However, I did have to manually install a few drivers myself. Laptops this old technically aren't compatible with Windows 11, and I'm not going to even try installing it. But others have had success installing Windows 11 on laptops from this era. ThinkPads have always been a favorite option for Linux users, and the hardware is very well supported. Modern-day ThinkPads can even be configured with a distribution of Linux from the factory. The open-source operating system is generally less resource-intensive than modern iterations of Windows, which may make it a smarter choice for older hardware. That being said, for the purpose of this video, I will be sticking to Windows 10, as that is what most PC users are running at this point in time. While some websites took a while to load compared to my desktop or my X1 Nano from 2021, there weren't any websites that I had issues with, and the latest versions of Chrome and Firefox ran without problems. Most people spend a good chunk of their time on social media, and sites like Facebook, Reddit, and Discord ran exactly as they should on the T61. YouTube, while a little sluggish to load, can still be used, if you are willing to compromise some video quality. 720p at 60 frames per second was the highest resolution I could play YouTube videos without excessive buffering. 1080p was borderline unplayable, and I didn't bother trying to play higher resolutions. I was also able to stream shows and movies from Hulu without playback issues or buffering. Full HD videos on the computer itself struggled to play, but by downscaling the content to 720p, I was able to play them just fine. For productivity, I installed the Office suite of applications, and they all ran as they should on this laptop. Office applications aren't exactly known for being resource hogs, but it's still good to know for sure that they can run. It's possible larger projects and PowerPoint presentations that heavily utilize multimedia may stumble a bit here and there, but in my tests I didn't experience this and everything worked well enough. There's no better way to make an old laptop work as hard as it can than to edit together a video. Using an older version of Vegas, as the newer versions are total garbage, the T61 was pushed to its limits and struggled to handle 1080p 60 frame per second video. However, you can still accomplish some basic editing if you're in a pinch. Downscaling the videos to 720p made the editing process smoother, but still a little sluggish. Regardless of the resolution, exporting videos took a long time, with a 10-minute video with a few titles and transitions taking an hour and a half to render. So if you want to use a 15-year-old laptop to edit videos, you'll need to have a lot of patience. Gaming on a laptop this old sounds like a joke, and this model's NVIDIA NVS 140M graphics card with a whopping 128 megabytes of RAM isn't going to be enough to run modern AAA titles. In fact, many newer games I tried to run just crashed on startup. However, lightweight games and older titles can be played at a respectable frame rate. Many people do utilize old laptops like this for retro PC gaming as well as emulation, so if that's something that interests you, it can be done on here. Performance improvements may be possible with the use of an external graphics card, but I doubt it would make a huge difference with modern titles. One major downside of any old laptop is that the rechargeable battery that makes the laptop portable is usually approaching the end of its useful life. But aftermarket batteries of varying quality are still available for most laptops from this era. I can get 2.5 to 3 hours of use out of the battery I have in this machine, but your mileage may vary, and I suggest keeping a charger handy anyways. If there is any selling point for older laptops, it's how easy most of them are to upgrade and service if the user desires. In these older ThinkPads, it's possible to replace or upgrade the RAM, storage, wireless card, and processor with just the removal of a few screws. A major part of why my machine is even remotely usable is because I've upgraded almost every component, as outlined in previous videos. It is also easy to find replacement parts on sites like eBay, and Lenovo provides service manuals on their website for every ThinkPad, which makes repairs and upgrades much more accessible to the average person. While the ThinkPad T61 is still able to handle the demands of the modern web, and most modern software that I tried still ran perfectly fine, the test was admittedly a best-case scenario. My machine has been upgraded about as far as it can go without serious modifications. And even with those upgrades, the CPU was constantly hitting full load, even with just basic tasks. While I was able to do everything I needed on this laptop aside from any graphics-intensive work, things will only become more difficult as time goes on. Websites and applications are always bogging down older hardware, and while performing upgrades like I have or using a more lightweight operating system like Linux may buy these machines a little more time, at the end of the day, it's a lot of time and money to invest in a laptop that is very close to being obsolete, and in many people's eyes already is. 2006 was when dual-core processors, 64-bit operating systems, and onboard Wi-Fi were more or less standard on laptops, and for a long time I've considered this to be the cutoff for usable hardware. Anything older than that is simply too old to handle the demands of modern applications and even the most basic of websites. The time period between 2006 and 2010 is when machines like the T61 came out, and also includes machines like the A1181 MacBook series, as well as the first few iterations of the MacBook Pro. Laptops from this era can still somewhat handle the modern web, but within the next couple of years will likely be too slow for everyday use. I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to get one of these laptops unless you really know what you're getting into. And that is where my opinion stands on machines like the T61 and any other laptop from the Core 2 Duo era. Comparatively, anything that's newer than around 2010 or so and uses Intel's Core i series of processors is likely still good enough for anything besides the most demanding of tasks, as I have proven in some of my other videos, such as my recent look at the 2012 X1 Carbon. They may be older and heavier than what you can buy brand new, but they still certainly have a few years left in them. The best part is most laptops from this era are around the same price, or not much more expensive, than an older laptop like the T61. I'm working on a more comprehensive video about what used laptops are a good value, but for anyone who's looking for a good machine to get now, I would say, aside from very specific use cases, the Core 2 Duo models are too old. I enjoy using my ThinkPad. I put a lot of time and money into this, and they're singled out by enthusiasts for their high-quality displays and classic keyboards. If you can find one for a really low price or even for free, it may be worth fixing up. but otherwise save your money and get something more modern. I look forward to showing you newer models another day, and as always I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.